Yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for our buses as well. Look great. Are we all good? Okay, Ron. Good morning, everybody. It's great to welcome you to Mellors here in Rochdale, one of our truly valued suppliers to the Bee Network. And how brilliant is it that there are young people working here at Mellors, apprentices, who are building buses that they then can see in service in their own community. That's something that people maybe think of an older generation doesn't happen anymore, but it is happening, and that's how the Bee Network is reindustrialising Rochdale and Greater Manchester. And actually, we're going to go further this week. We will announce tomorrow 160 T-level placements in the Bee Network, so more young people can have a path to a really good career. And it's all part of our alternative to the university route called the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate, the MBAC. So we give all of our young people a clear path in life. But obviously the best news of all today is that the government is backing the Bee Network with £2.5 billion. Thank you, Secretary of State. This is fantastic news for Greater Manchester, because it will take the Bee Network into the next phase and into a really exciting future. I had a glimpse of that future last week in Ashton, in Tameside, where we have just brought through our first all-electric depot. With the funding provided by the government, we will create the UK's first fully integrated, all-electric, zero-emission public transport system, and we will do that by the end of the decade. It's an incredible vision, and Greater Manchester is really bringing forward the future, as we have done so many times in our city's history. But the funding also will go right round Greater Manchester and benefit, people in all parts of the city region. So here in Rochdale, we will see a new tram train service begin, linking Oldham, Rochdale, Haywood, which hitherto has not been on our Metrolink system, and then up to Bury. We will have a new tram line to Stockport, which is something people there have long called for. We will bring 8 rail lines with the support of the Secretary of State into the Bee Network. We will integrate those lines into our capped payment system, like TfL Overground in London. 64 train stations will come in, and they will be amazing places to live and to invest, again, showing how transport can bring good growth. New interchanges in Lee and Bury, new tram stops in North Manchester, in Oldham, another one in Bury. This funding will go right round our city region. And what this says to you is that good transport powers good growth. Greater Manchester, in our first decade of devolution, has been growing faster than the UK economy for 10 years. 3.1% average annual growth over that period. That is something that hasn't happened for most of us here in our lifetimes. Most of the time, we've been growing slower than the UK economy, and the north-south divide has been getting wider. Well, we've reversed that, and we are closing that north-south divide now. But with this funding in the next decade, I believe we can go even further. And my offer to the Chancellor today is to achieve an even higher level of growth in the next decade than we did in the last. And I believe we can do that. I think the decade ahead of us, 2025 to 2035, could be the best decade for Greater Manchester since the Victorian period. And that is something that we are determined, myself, the leader of Rochdale, the leader of Oldham, the leader of Trafford, who are with us today, all of us together, we believe we can do it. And we now have got the backing to do it. So what I would say to the government is, we're ready to unlock a new era in Greater Manchester and really show how we can power the north with good growth, benefiting all of our residents and all of our communities. It's clear today that we are benefiting from a government that is actually putting investment into the north, the levelling up that was once promised is actually happening here. So the government is backing us, and our message from Greater Manchester today is that we're backing you. We're backing our Chancellor of the Exchequer as she goes into next week's spending review. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves.
Thank you very much, Andy and Heidi. It's great to have you here as well today. And it's fantastic to be in Rochdale at Mellors Bus Factory. Not just a good local business, although it is that, but also a key part of the B network supply chain. And it's good to see so many familiar faces here, including the leaders of some of our local councillors. 11 months ago today, this government was elected on a promise of change, to deliver security for working people and renewal for our country, to build a stronger and more resilient Britain, a country built on and powered through the contribution of people in all parts of our country. Today I will set out more of our plans to make that a reality. I know how hard the last few years have been for so many people. I have always been clear that the central challenge facing this government is to improve living standards and to renew our public services. And that the only sustainable way to turn around Britain's growth performance after 14 wasted years, to put more money in people's pockets, to revive our high streets, to give our children the opportunities that they need to succeed, and put simply, our plan is to make working people, to make our country better off. The central barrier to economic growth has been underinvestment. For too long, Britain has lagged behind every other G7 economy when it comes to business investment as a share of GDP. One of the consequences was that the last Parliament was the worst on record for living standards. This government's economic strategy is designed to fix that problem, underpinned by the 3 pillars that I set out before the election. First, stability, so that investors, businesses and families have the confidence to plan for the future. Second, reform, to remove the barriers that get in the way of so much potential. And third, investment, the lifeblood of growth and therefore of living standards. My Cabinet colleagues and I have wasted no time in pursuing this agenda. Overhauling our planning system, the single greatest barrier that businesses told me was standing in their way. Starting in our first week in office with the biggest reforms to our planning system in a generation. Launching Britain's first National Wealth Fund to help mobilise more than £70 billion of private sector investment into some of the industries of the future, like clean energy, defence and tech. Reforming our pension system to unlock billions of pounds of investment in British assets. Forging 3 new major trade deals to save and create jobs with India, the United States and the European Union, covering steel, manufacturing and agriculture. And alongside that, we'll be shaping the modern industrial strategy and the 10-year infrastructure strategy, bringing together government, business and working people to focus on the high potential parts of our economy and our future. We have already made significant progress. While it is just 1 quarter, the most recent numbers showed Britain to be the fastest growing economy in the G7. And real wages rose more in less than 10 months under Labour than they did over the first 10 years of the previous Conservative government. But we know that not enough people are feeling that yet. That trust remains low and prosperity is too narrowly shared. I know that we must do more. In a week's time, I will set out a spending review targeted squarely on the renewal of Britain, focused on the priorities of working people, by investing in our security, in our health, and in our economic growth, to deliver on the promise of change to make you and your family better off. I have long said that the only viable strategy for growth today is one that builds on strong and broad foundations. A Britain that is better off cannot rely on a handful of places forging ahead of the rest. And so we must reject once and for all the exhausted idea that a strong economy can be powered by just a few people, just a few industries, just a few parts of our economy. The result of such thinking has been growth created in too few places and too few people feeling the benefits. Wide gaps between regions and between our cities and our towns. A sense of injustice as a social contract phrase, and diminishing returns for both growth and productivity. For every success story, and there are many, there is potential that is held back by the uneven distribution of opportunity, by the long legacy of deindustrialisation and past political choices that consigned whole industries and whole communities that depended upon them to decline. And yes, by spending decisions made down in London. Now, I've been a Leeds MP for 15 years. Another great city, Andy. Like so many of my colleagues, wherever they represent, and so many of our constituents, I am painfully familiar with big promises that come to nothing. The frustration that people feel as good work and opportunities slip away, while young people are presented with a choice to stay close to home where they want to be, or to move away and find a better job paying better wages. Families wrenched apart, or opportunities missed out on. No one should have to make that choice. So that is why I and my colleagues are determined to change things. Because I know that there is brilliant talent to be found right across our country. I can see that potential in all of our towns and our cities. The creativity and scientific rigour in our universities. The leading businesses pushing at the frontier in sectors that will be core to our modern industrial strategy, in tech, energy, transport and finance. I see that potential everywhere that I go. I know that a prosperous United Kingdom depends on the economic strength of all its parts and on the contribution of working people everywhere. And that is why this autumn I will be partnering with the Business Secretary and with the Mayor of the West Midlands, Richard Parker, to host a regional investment summit to showcase the investment potential that all of our regions have to offer. Over the next week, you will hear a lot of debate about my so-called self-imposed fiscal rules. Now, contrary to some conventional wisdom, I didn't come into politics because I care passionately about fiscal rules. I came into politics because I want to make a difference to the lives of working people. Because I believe as strongly now as I did when I was inspired to join the Labour Party almost 30 years ago, that every person should have the same opportunities as others to thrive and to succeed, no matter what their parents do, no matter where they grow up. And because I know that economic responsibility and social justice go hand in hand. Now, after 2022, no one should need to be told about the dangers of reckless borrowing for the financial security of ordinary families. When Liz Truss and the Conservatives trashed market confidence in our British economy, it was working people who paid the price. Be in no doubt, Nigel Farage and Reform are itching to repeat that exact same experiment, to pursue those fantasy economics all over again. And the results? Well, they would be the same. Market instability and interest rates rising, with soaring rents and thousands of pounds extra on families' mortgages. Businesses would pay more for their borrowing, and pensions that people save hard for would be put in peril again. I will never take those risks. Labour will never take those risks. Strong and transparent fiscal rules are an indispensable safeguard for working people, and that is why my rules are non-negotiable. So let's be clear. It is not me imposing borrowing limits on government. Those limits are the product of economic reality. So fiscal rules do matter, but the Conservatives' fiscal rules, well, they guaranteed neither stability nor investment, and that's why I changed them. At the budget last year, I changed Britain's fiscal rules to better serve both stability and investment, giving us the strong foundations that we need to renew our country as we promised. The first rule is for stability, that day-to-day government spending should be paid for by tax receipts. That is the sound economic choice. And it is the fair choice, because it isn't right to expect future generations to pay for the services that we rely on today. If only the previous government had have made those same choices. Instead, we inherited a total mess. A £22 billion black hole in day-to-day spending and debt at its highest level since the early 1960s. And yet, at the same time, public services were at breaking point. Last year, I made the decisions that I judged right and necessary to get Britain on a sound financial footing and to provide the urgent resource that our public services needed. That is why I made decisions, some of them extremely difficult, and certainly not all of them popular, to raise taxes on business and indeed on the wealthiest in the budget, enabling a £190 billion real terms increase over the spending review period compared to the Conservatives' day-to-day spending plans. Spending for our schools, our hospitals and our police, the services upon which we all rely. Now, even with those decisions, and even with that injection of cash, not every department will get everything that they want next week. And I have had to say no to things that I want to do too. But that's not because of my fiscal rules. It is a result of 14 years of Conservative maltreatment of our public services, our public realm, and of our economy. It is the stability that my rules support and the choices that we made as a government in October that have helped facilitate 4 cuts in interest rates since the last election, saving £650 a year for a family taking out a new typical 2-year fixed mortgage. My second fiscal rule is what enables us to invest in Britain's economic renewal, to keep Britain's public sector debt on a sustainable path, while allowing government to invest in the infrastructure that will provide stronger economic growth in the future. The decisions that we made in October mean that for the first time, Treasury actually takes account of the benefits and not just the costs of investment. And together, the fiscal rules mean that, unlike our predecessors, we will not be balancing the books by cutting investment. And that is why we can increase investment by over £113 billion more than the last government planned, meaning public investment will be at its highest sustained level since the 1970s. Combined, these changes deliver over £300 billion of extra spending across 5 years on our public services and on our economic future. Britain faces, and I choose investment. because I believe in an entrepreneurial and an active state. And I reject wholeheartedly the old-fashioned dogmatic view that the only good thing a government can do is get out of the way. These choices that I am making are about realising that entrepreneurial and active state. At the spending review, I will set out in detail the allocation of those additional resources to power growth and to renew our public services. And the choice is already clear. Where Reform and the Conservatives would gamble with Britain's future, Labour will invest in that future. Where they offer chaos, Labour offers stability. Where they offer decline, Labour offers investment. And where they offer more of the same, we offer change. Change that we can now deliver because of the choices we have made. Today, I can tell you about one part of those investments. They are underpinned by a step change in how government approaches and evaluates the case for investing in all of our regions. The Treasury Green Book sets the guidance for how public servants assess the value for money of government projects. It may sound dry, but it is one of the reasons why there hasn't been enough investment in the North and the Midlands for decades. And I have heard from mayors across the country, from Andy, but also from Steve Rotherham, the Mayor of Liverpool, that previous governments have wielded the Green Book against them as an excuse to deny important investments in their areas and their people. That's why in January, I ordered a review of the Green Book and how it is being used to make sure that this government gives every region a fair hearing when it comes to investment. I will publish the full conclusions of that review next week. However, I can tell you now that it will mark a new approach to decision-making in government and an end to siloed Whitehall thinking, making sure that government is taking account of the reinforcing economic effects of infrastructure investment in housing, in skills and in jobs, to invest in all of our nations and regions, not just a few. Next week, I will set out our plans in full for England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, in housing, in energy, in roads and in rail. But today I want to tell you about just one part of our plan, renewing our transport systems in England's largest mayoral regions, including here in Greater Manchester and across the North and the Midlands. Because connectivity is an absolutely critical factor in unlocking the potential of towns and cities outside of London. One of the areas in which previous governments have promised most but delivered least. And that will now change. Let me tell you why it matters. Modern growth rests on dynamic, connected city regions, creating clusters of activity so that people can get around, communicate, share ideas, commute, find good work and earn wages that flow back into strong local economies. Stronger transport links within cities and the towns around them create opportunity by connecting labour markets and making it easier for firms to buy and sell goods and services in different places to different people. Labour's strong investment in the past in strongly integrated transport systems, including in London, helps explain London's global success and also its advantages over other UK cities. Now, we want London to succeed, but it is the lack of that infrastructure which puts England's other great cities, Birmingham, Liverpool, Newcastle, at a disadvantage compared to their European counterparts that have this infrastructure. And it helps to explain our underperformance relative to other European economies. If we were to increase the productivity of those second cities in the UK to match the national average, our economy today would be £86 billion larger. And so because this government believes that prosperity must come from the contribution of us all, because all of the sizable evidence shows that public investment can crowd in many times its volume in private investments, and because we know the potential that exists in all of our towns and cities, I can tell you today that we will be making the biggest ever investment by a British government in transport links within our city regions and their surrounding towns. £15.6 billion in transport funding settlements to be delivered by our regional mayors. More than doubling real-term spending on city-region connectivity. The last government made big promises to invest in city regions. We heard it all. They had no plan to fund it. Thanks to the changes to our fiscal framework announced in the budget, this government now does have the money to fund it. And that money is going to our mayors to deliver on the priorities of their communities. New trams, new train stations and bus routes to link up our towns and cities. Unlocking new homes, new jobs, new investment and leisure opportunities across our regions. And let me take you through those city regional investments in turn. Investment in Greater Manchester to help make the B network that is built here in Rochdale the UK's first fully integrated zero-emission public transport system by 2030, with new tram stops in Bury, North Manchester and Oldham, and a new Metrolink extension to Stockport, meaning shorter commutes into central Manchester, making sure that 90% of Greater Manchester residents will live within a 5-minute walk of a bus or tram that comes at least once every half an hour. And opening up connections for people in Bury, in Haywood, in Rochdale and in Oldham to the tens of thousands of new jobs in the Northern Gateway. Investment in the Liverpool city region, backing the Mayor Steve Rotherham to deliver 3 new rapid bus routes, linking up the city centre, John Lennon Airport, Anfield, the new Everton Stadium on Bramley Moor Dock, and new homes built on the Central Docks redevelopment, alongside the largest ever investment in Merseyside railway stations to serve Halton, St Helens and Woodchurch. Investment in West Yorkshire, so that Tracy Brabin can fulfil her manifesto commitment to the people of West Yorkshire to deliver that mass transit system, with spades in the ground by 2028, unlocking in the process over 7,000 new homes, improving local transport for 700,000 people, to link up Bradford, Kirklees, Calderdale, Wakefield, Pudsey and Leeds. The largest city in Western Europe without a light rail or metro system, but not for much longer. Investment in the North East to allow our Mayor, Kim McGuinness, to extend the Tyne and Wear Metro, linking Washington with Newcastle and Sunderland, and in line with our industrial strategy priorities, strengthening one of the largest advanced manufacturing zones in Europe, connecting Nissan and the businesses in its supply chain to a wider pool of talent. Investment in South Yorkshire, supporting our Mayor Oliver Coppard, so that in addition to the reopening of Doncaster Airport, he can renew the existing and now publicly controlled Supertram network, with track replacements, overhead line maintenance and rolling stock renewal, with a full fleet of new vehicles by 2032. A bigger and better integrated transport network, linking jobs and homes in Sheffield and Rotherham. Investment in the west of England, backing the Mayor Helen Godwin's plans for mass transit development across the region, and improved rail infrastructure to help unlock more services between Brabazon and the city centre, meaning shorter journey times to Bristol Temple Meads from across the wider area. Investment in the Tees Valley, in Middlesbrough Station, unblocking local networks and increasing capacity on local lines. Investment in the East Midlands, so that our Mayor, Claire Ward, can forge the Trent Arc, linking Derby and Nottingham to create tens of thousands of new jobs and homes, connecting Infinity Park Investment Zone and the East Midlands Freeport, with sites including Ratcliffe-on-Soar, clean energy and advanced manufacturing, and East Midlands Intermodal Park, home of Toyota in the region along the Trent Arc corridor. And investment in the West Midlands, backing our Mayor Richard Parker's plans for a metro expansion from Birmingham city centre to the new sports quarter to unlock more than £3 billion of private investment in an area with some of the lowest levels of economic activity in all of the UK, with the potential to create more than 8,000 jobs and catalyse the regeneration of East Birmingham and of Solihull. For some people living in some of our biggest cities and towns around them, these measures will mean shorter commute times. They will mean good work and money flowing back into local economies. They will mean businesses connecting with workers, customers and supply chains. They will mean the revival of high streets. They will mean young people able to stay close to homes and pursue the opportunities that they dream of. It will mean more growth, more parts of our country benefiting, and more people and more places across the UK feeling better off. In short, it will mean the renewal of our cities and our towns all across the UK. As we build train stations and tram lines and buses, that will mean orders for steel made here in Britain. 6 weeks ago, this government was presented with a choice: to allow British Steel in Scunthorpe to close, or to intervene in a way that British governments have been too reluctant to do for too long. In opposition, I promised that our economic policy would be guided by what I call securonomics, a belief that an active state should and would take the necessary action to provide security for families and resilience for our national economy. That we would end the days when government turned a blind eye to where things are made and who makes them. And I meant what I said. And so I was not prepared to tolerate a situation in which Britain's steel capacity was fundamentally undermined, in which our infrastructure, our industries, our security became dependent on foreign imports. And I was not prepared to see another working class community lose its pride, the prosperity, the dignity that industry provides. So we intervened. We saved British Steel and the jobs that went with it. And in line with that principle, as we invest in transport for our regions, that investment will support British supply chains. I promised that this Labour government would buy, make and sell more here in Britain, and I meant it. Growth made in Britain, jobs here in Britain, and a new generation of crucial national infrastructure built right here in Britain. What I have set out today is just one part of our ambitious plan for the renewal of Britain. A plan which marks a decisive break with the days when government stood back and shrugged its shoulders, as jobs, industry and aspiration were drained away from so many of our towns and cities. Steps towards a new economic model, driven by investment in all parts of the country, not just a few. That is how we intend to deliver on that promise of change, to make you and your family better off. Next week, there will be more to come. This government promised change, and we are keeping that promise. Thank you. Okay. I'll take some questions now. We start with BBC Northwest Tonight, Kevin Fitzpatrick.
So the local leaders will no doubt welcome this announcement today, but you'll be aware that what they say is the big thing which would dramatically... So the local leaders, I'm sure, would welcome this announcement today, but you'll know that they also say that what this northern economy really needs to move things forward and rebalance the economy is new investment in the rail infrastructure. And there's been a big campaign for that commitment that the Tories made before you to build the Crossrail for the north, particularly initially Manchester to Liverpool. So can you commit that that is going to happen, and how much money will be allocated to it next week?
So today I'm able to announce the mayoral settlements, which is a 2.4% increase in the funding for those combined authorities compared to the plans of the previous government for the previous Parliament. That's a substantial uplift, and then they'll make decisions about how to spend it. But as I was really clear, all I am setting out today is those settlements for the mayors. There'll be more to come next week on a whole wider set of investments in transport, in both road and rail, but also in housing, in energy and in digital infrastructure, and also support for our towns and our local places, all of which I know, because I speak to them regularly, are really important to all of our local leaders, including here in Greater Manchester. But I also just want to push back on something you said, that the previous government made these commitments. The previous government made a lot of commitments. What they didn't do is put the money in to be able to deliver them. And that is the big difference about what we are doing. On Wednesday next week, I will be setting out in a spending review where you can see every pound allocated, investment for 3 years for day-to-day spending, investment for 5 years for capital spending. We'll then be publishing a 10-year national infrastructure plan. That is a world away. You can make all the promises you like, but if the money's not there, they're not real. And that is the difference between the hollow promises of the last government and the serious ambition and investment of this government, with our plans not just generated in Westminster and Whitehall, but built up in conjunction with our mayors and with our local leaders, because we believe that the people who represent their local communities, live there day in, day out, know what is best for their local people and their local communities. And that is what is different about this government compared with the hollow and shallow promises of the past. I'll take the next question from Joseph at Manchester Evening News.
Hi. Sorry. Just following on from Kevin's question, I mean, we at the Manchester Evening News have been campaigning for the new line from Manchester to Liverpool, so we hope the reports that it's happening are true. If you won't tell us that you can make a commitment to it today and how much you'll be spending, can you at least tell us what you think of the Mayor's proposal for the new line? And as part of those plans, the Mayors have talked about an underground station at Piccadilly, which would also improve links to your constituency of Leeds. So can you tell us whether that will feature as part of the plans?
Today I'm focusing on the mayoral settlements, not on heavy rail. So today I'm setting out £15.6 billion across 8 combined authorities, which is a 2.4% increase in spending in real terms in this Parliament compared with the last Parliament. And the focus today is on connections within city regions, connecting the towns with the cities so that more people can access good jobs, and we can open up more housing development and more investment across the region. There's more to come next week, but I will set that out in the spending review next week. The next question from the BBC, Alex Forsyth.
Thank you very much, Chancellor. Thank you. You set out this investment in transport projects today, but isn't the reality that next week your spending plans are going to be difficult for some public services? And if you are determined to stick to your fiscal rules, can you level with people about how tough day-to-day spending might be?
Well, thanks very much for your question. As I set out, I changed the fiscal rules last autumn. And those changes to the fiscal rules and also the difficult decisions that I made, not always popular, to increase taxes on business and also the most wealthiest. The non-DOMS changes, capital gains, private equity, private jets, private schools, that brought in around £40 billion a year. And the result of those two sets of changes, both on tax and the fiscal rules, meant that we're able to spend £190 billion more on day-to-day spending compared to the plans we inherited. and we're able to spend £113 billion more on capital spending compared to the plans we inherited. So overall, the spending review that I will be publishing next week will have more than £300 billion more spending over this Parliament than the plans we inherited just 11 months ago. Does that mean that we'll be able to do everything that we want to do? No. As I said in my speech just now, there are good things that I've had to say no to. The reason for that is because it is important to have control of the public finances. But everyone here will know, I expect a lot of people here have got mortgages that went up in 2022 because of what Liz Truss did to the economy. She crashed the economy, markets lost confidence, interest rates went through the roof, and people that are affected most by that were just ordinary working people who had done nothing wrong but found that their dreams of home ownership were further away than ever, or the mortgages they had taken out in good faith, they were now paying hundreds of pounds extra for. So when I say the fiscal rules are non-negotiable, it's not a matter of pride for me that we stick to the fiscal rules. It's about protecting working people from economic irresponsibility that they pay the price for. So that does mean we can't say yes to everything, but because of the changes we made, both the difficult choices on tax, but also the right choices, and the right choices too on fiscal rules, mean that we have got £300 billion more to spend over the next 5 years than if I had simply stuck to the spending decisions of the previous Conservative government. ITV, Carl.
Thank you, Chancellor. You say you've had to say no to some things that your colleagues and you would like to do. Are your manifesto commitments on policing, housing and energy at risk?
We made those commitments in our manifesto and we stick to them. All of the manifesto commitments that we made were fully costed and fully funded. So using money from increasing VAT on private schools to invest in new teachers in our state schools, using the energy profits levy on the profits that the big energy companies are making to invest in renewable energy, cracking down on non-DOMs so that if you make Britain your home, you pay your taxes here, and putting that money into our National Health Service. So those promises were fully funded, fully costed, and we've raised those taxes to put that money into our frontline public services, which is why we can deliver on our manifesto commitments, including not increasing the taxes that working people pay, the key taxes working people pay, income tax, national insurance and VAT. Sky, Beth.
Thank you, Chancellor. Beth Rigby, Sky News. Chancellor, in the past 2 weeks, voters have heard about big increases in defence spending, a reversal of cuts to winter fuel allowance, potentially lifting the 2-child benefit cap, and they wonder how you're going to pay for all of these additional commitments. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is pressing you for more wealth taxes. Andy Burnham thinks that you should look again at council tax so that people with bigger homes potentially pay more. You've ruled out changing your fiscal rules. Can you be honest with the public that you cannot rearm and do all the rest on welfare with either really deep cuts elsewhere or future tax rises? So do Angela and Andy have a point?
So the increase in defence spending that underpins the Strategic Defence Review that was published earlier this week is funded by a commensurate reduction in the international aid budget. We took that down from 0.5% of GDP to 0.3% of GDP, so we could lift defence spending from 2.3% of GDP to 2.5% of GDP. So that is fully costed and fully funded. And as we've been clear on winter fuel, we will set out how we will fund that at the next fiscal event. We'll set out the funding, or set out how everything would be paid for in the budget in the autumn. But it is important that everything that we do is funded, because that's how people know that we can afford it.
So you're not ruling out tax rises in wealth taxes or revaluation of council houses?
Well, I'm not going to write another 4 years' worth of budgets before we've got even through the first year of this government. But we made tax changes in the autumn last year worth £40 billion so that we could provide that injection of cash into our public services. But the most important thing that we can do to have money for public services is to grow the economy. And that's why we changed the fiscal rules, why I changed the fiscal rules to take investment out of the rule about balancing the budget. And that's what's enabled the £113 billion extra of investment expenditure. And as the Office of Budget Responsibility and the IMF have evaluated, the changes that we've already made around planning will already make our economy bigger, contributing to higher tax revenues, which we can then reinvest in our public services. Next question, if I take Martina from The Sun.
Thank you, Chancellor. With fiscal headroom vanishing by today, can you repeat here your pledge not to increase income tax, VAT and national insurance, and your commitment at the budget to unfreeze income tax thresholds?
I already, in my answer to Carl, said that the commitments that we made in the manifesto not to increase the key taxes that working people make, income tax, VAT and national insurance, are promises that we stand by. We will implement what was in our manifesto. Take the question from The Telegraph from Amy Gibbons.
Hi, thank you, Chancellor. Just following on there from Beth's question, will you consider the ideas put forward in Angela Rayner's memo for the budget, or will you rule them out completely? And do you believe Angela's fully behind your economic strategy? And just very briefly, can you guarantee Lord Hermer will keep his job despite the revelations of the past week? Thank you.
So it's perfectly normal for government ministers to come up with ideas about government. That is what collective government is about. Angela Rayner had ideas around, I think, around £3 billion of tax changes, some of them in housing, which is an area that she covers. But we did raise taxes by £40 billion in the budget last year, much more than £3 billion. And indeed, we've unlocked £300 billion of additional spending. We took the tax choices that we needed to provide that initial injection of cash into our public services, which is what has enabled us to spend £190 billion more over this Parliament on day-to-day spending. And then, of course, as I said, the rule around capital spending has unlocked a further £113 billion so that we can invest the £15.6 billion, for example, that I've announced today for regional transport settlements. The Prime Minister obviously appoints the Cabinet. That's in his gift, whether that's my job or any other job. But I have full confidence in Richard Hermer. Question from Aggie from LBC.
Thank you, Chancellor. Aggie Chambray, LBC. You said last year that the last budget was a once-in-a-Parliament tax hike. Will you repeat that vow today?
Yes, we made decisions in the budget last year to increase taxes by £40 billion. I have absolutely no intention of repeating a budget on that scale again. That budget was absolutely necessary because the previous government left a £22 billion black hole in the public finances, not some year in the future, but in the fiscal year we're in. They had already spent the reserves set aside for genuine emergencies 3 times over just 3 months into the financial year. So I had to take immediate action, both to put our public finances on a firm footing and also to ensure that our public services that had been committed funding, but that money hadn't been made available, to make sure that they could continue to function. I've now drawn a line under that economic mismanagement. People can be confident that our public finances are on a firm footing. And this week, I'll be allocating funds based on the budget settlement that we made last year. I've just said that. The question from Daisy at The Times.
Thank you, Chancellor. Sir Mark Rowley has warned that if frontline policing is faced with cuts in the spending review, forces will have to make stark choices about which crimes they investigate. Which crimes are the government happy for police to ignore?
we will be increasing spending on police in the spending review next week, so that's not a decision that, or a choice that I would recognise. Any other questions? Catherine?
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GB News. Chancellor, you refer to people in the north being made big promises that come to nothing. You're here today, but 5 months ago you announced a huge infrastructure splurge based pretty much entirely on London and the South East, the areas that are already doing the best. Isn't it the case that for the Treasury, the north is an afterthought? And also, if I may, more uncertainty about tariffs today. Isn't it the case that Donald Trump's vagaries are proving to be the stuff of nightmares for you?
So the announcements we've made today is an uplift at 2.4 times more spending in this Parliament on these regional mayoral transport settlements compared to the settlement in the last Parliament. That is a substantial uplift, which is what makes possible the investments that I've announced today in extending existing tram networks, building new tram networks, new buses, new stations, are all possible because the investment in the North and the Midlands that I'm setting out today. And this is just one part, £15.6 billion, of a £113 billion uplift in public investment that I'm going to be setting out in more detail. And of course, it also comes on top of the investments through the National Wealth Fund, investments in places like Sunderland, which I announced just a couple of weeks ago, in a battery factory for electric vehicles. It comes on top of the commitment to carbon capture and storage, more than £20 billion of public and private investment in Merseyside and in Teesside. So we're committed to growth everywhere. And one, I think, indication that this is not just about one-off announcements, but about a whole different approach, is the fact that we are changing the Green Book. And as said in the speech, it might sound dry, but it's the excuse that government have used for years to say, oh, we'd love to do this, but it's not good value for money. Well, it's only not good value for money because you've written the rules that way. And we're changing that. And we're changing that because that is what our mayors asked us to do. They said they don't want handouts. They don't want a Labour government doing them favours. They want us to take seriously their investment propositions. And that's what the reforms that I'm going to be setting out in full detail next week will enable us to do. So it's not just a one-off decision, this is about a whole different way of doing things. And let me say something about the tariffs. It was welcomed today by UK Steel that we have an exemption on the 50% steel tariffs that Donald Trump is bringing in. They will apply to every country in the world apart from Britain. That is because of the negotiating that Johnny Reynolds and his team at DBT have led, but also because of the work that our Prime Minister has done in building that relationship and setting out the case for Britain with the President of the United States. Now, we have 25% tariffs on steel today, but we've signed a deal, we've done a deal with the US that will bring those down to zero. That is good for British Steel, but it is also good for Jaguar Land Rover and other car manufacturers and other industries in the UK. And we are still the only country that has done a deal with the US, but not just with the US, also with India, which helps many industries, including Scotch whisky, where tariffs have more than halved, and the deal with the EU, which helps our farming sector in particular, but also other parts of the economy. So 3 trade deals, a National Wealth Fund, reforming the Green Book, reforming how our pension system invests in British assets, all with the sole purpose of making Britain better off so we can make working people right across our country better off. Is Jen here from the FT? Oh, yes.
Hello, thank you. We published a story this morning about the Labour Party postponing its latest business engagement event at the last minute. It was due to take place on June 23rd. And we spoke to a number of businesses who'd been asked to pay £5,000 ahead. who are getting increasingly jaded by constant requests for cash from the party in the name of business engagement. This is the second similar event Labour's cancelled in recent months, and in both cases you were due to speak. Why is Labour organising and then postponing or cancelling these events, and are you trying to use British business as a cash point? Thank you.
I think that it's well known that I regularly meet British businesses in my capacity as Chancellor, also as a local MP, and when I'm on visits right around the country, as I am doing right now at this great bus company here in Rochdale. So look, I don't think that is a valid criticism of me as Chancellor that I don't spend enough time with business. I go around the country every week meeting with businesses, but also meeting with working people who are the lifebloods of our economy, and also meeting with smaller businesses who represent around 90% of our economy. So, you know, I'm proud of the relationships that I've got with businesses and with working people. And I think, you know, you can see that in the announcements we're making today and the support that they have from the business community, but also working people, the trade unions that represent them, and mayors that represent their local areas. I'll just take a couple more questions, then we'll have to wrap up. Yeah, lady there.
Thank you, Chancellor. Sophie Huskisson from The Mirror. Pensioners are waiting anxiously for details about changes to winter fuel payment eligibility. Will we get them in next week's spending review? And if I may, another quick one. Will you have to increase defence spending to 3.5% of GDP over the next decade to keep Donald Trump on side and keep pace with NATO? Thank you.
So I had to make decisions last year to restore sound public finances, and that involved a number of difficult decisions around welfare, taxation, and also public spending, including the decision to means test winter fuel payments, so only the poorest pensioners, those on pension credit, got it. But we have now put our public finances on a firmer footing. The economy is in a better shape, but we have also listened to the concerns that people had about the level of the means test. And so we will be making changes to that. They will be in place so that pensioners are paid this coming winter, and we'll announce the detail of that and the level of that as soon as we possibly can. But people should be in no doubt that the means test will increase and people will get, more people will get winter fuel payment this winter. On the question about defence spending, that we've set out a fully costed, a fully funded plan to take defence spending to 2.5% of GDP within just 2 years, and we will take defence spending to 3% in the next Parliament. Of course, that's got to be dependent on economic and fiscal circumstances, but you know, we are already, and we will set out more detail of that increase to 2.5% in the spending review next week. Final question, yes, lady there.
Hannah Al-Othman from The Guardian. Chancellor, how much of a priority is tackling child poverty, given that the strategy has been delayed? And do you share Keir Starmer's hope that you'll be able to scrap the two-child limit that has been described by Gordon Brown and many others as cruel?
So that is a cap that we inherited from the previous government, and it will cost, I think, just over £3 billion to reverse. And I have been clear that we won't make spending commitments without being able to you know, explain where the money is going to come from. But this government is determined to reduce child poverty. It's a moral mission for this government. It's why we have already started on that with the rollout of the first breakfast clubs from April at primary schools. It's why we've put more money into childcare so that more parents can work more hours to balance work and family life and put more money in their families' pockets. But every Labour government has reduced child poverty. We are determined to do so as well. The Child Poverty Task Force will be reporting in the autumn, and then we'll be setting out further plans. Thank you very much for being here today and for your questions, and thank you to the leaders of the Council as well for coming.